Okay. Well, I think we can go. So, welcome everybody. My name is Shannon McGuire. I'm the host today. This is actually our 103rd webinar series. Um, and
Oh,
I am the.
yep.
What's that, Dave?
I said that's great. Yeah, wow.
Okay.
It's hard to
Yeah.
believe.
All right. And then I'm the first time hosting here for Insights Now. Today, we're going to talk about the innovation challenge and what GLP-1 can teach us about navigating innovation challenges. Um, and if you want to go ahead and advance. As I mentioned, I'm the host. I joined the company back in the fall. I'm here to bring our AI agentic behavioral framework, Clara, to the market with the company. We'll introduce Clara, though, in a minute. But that's a little bit about me. I've spent about 30 years, a little over 30 years in the market research space, working across big and small companies. And I've also done a couple of software startups, including startups that have AI in them embedded outside of the industry in the collaboration space specifically. And then Dave, do you want to take
Yeah,
it away?
yeah. I'm really excited to see the group that's here today. So welcome everybody. Dave Lundahl. For those of you that don't know me, I'm the CEO for Insights Now. I've been in the industry about 40 years. It's hard for me to say that, but nonetheless, seen a lot of changes in the industry. I think what we're going to talk about today is some of the most exciting stuff that I've seen in my whole career. I'm so excited. The idea of GLP-1, is really, really transformational to the industry, food industry especially. But the idea of that we're going to bring forth about this other person that's entity, I should say, Clara today. I'm really excited about that as well.
Great. So here's how to participate today. So you go ahead and use the Q&A to reach the hosts, myself and Dave, or the panelists. And then you can use the chat to communicate with everybody. So I'll be monitoring that. In particular, Dave will be doing most of the talking today, but I'll be monitoring that as we go. So Dave, why do you feel like the GLP-1 is a great case study in the innovation disruption space?
Yeah, so you think about innovation, you're either going to be focusing on um, uh, trying to disrupt people in ways to make their lives better, or you're looking at innovation where people have already been disrupted and how to help them cope. And the idea of GLP-1 is in the latter. I mean, people that and what we're going to talk about is what we're learning from our sort of behavioral intelligence that we're building around this idea of how people are disrupted and what they're seeking, and it creates huge opportunities for food companies, huge opportunities for other companies that are providing other sort of services around the whole idea of GLP-1 and what people are trying to seek to do to improve their lives. So it's a great case study for just looking at this idea of when people have been disrupted. How do you take advantage of that? What's the opportunities to help people cope with that? So the what we did is when we started looking at this is maybe a year and a half ago, we started really focusing on this area as we saw the GLP-1 sort of industry sort of grow, and we're looking at probably around 16% of people that are currently have or are in the process of coming on and off various different GLP-1 prescriptions. And now with Wegovy coming on with a pill format, that is in addition, it's going to make, as a cost dropping so dramatically, it's going to increase even more. I've heard reports as possibly as much as 30% of the general consumer sort of numbers of people in North America in particular are, but around the world, India is the highest number of GLP-1 users in the world, just because the sheer magnitude of the size of that company. So it's a global trend as much as what is going on in North America itself. So these are the types of questions that we asked when we first started looking at this: is how does GLP impact the consumer journey? And focused on and food and beverage, but it also focuses on beauty care and other sort of industries. What are the associated risks for the food industry? How do you mitigate these risks? And last, then how do you discover moments of opportunity within to target and to find people that have been disrupted, how to improve their lives? And so to do that, what we did is we built an intelligent knowledge base. And what I mean by that is we built a knowledge base utilizing data science tools, 60,000 verbatims of GLP-1 users about their experiences. And we did this in partnership with a company called 113 Technologies, a fantastic modeling group. They model social listening information. And then we did a quali-scale study about a year ago from about 1,000 people and about their food aspirations. And we had a lot of GLP users as part of that study. And we had 2 additional surveys from GLP users and post users about their journeys. And so we ingested all this information. And what we did is we built a system called Clara. And Clara is a behavioral intelligence agent. And this agent, we're able to now, it's been informed on terms of behavioral science frameworks. And so that's the lens that Clara brings on top of this knowledge base that we've built. And so today's information, what we're going to be doing is showing to you how we sort of taught how Clara, when we asked Clara questions from this intelligence, what she said. And it's really fascinating. And I'm going to show basically summaries of what she said. This is the comment that really sort of summed it up for me. And that is GLP users are shifting their behaviors from living to eat to eating to live.
So, Dave, what are the core behavioral changes? What do they mean for innovation here?
Yeah, so think about people, and when they've been disrupted, they're going on this journey for various different reasons. One reason it could be weight loss. Another one could be that they have a concern or a medical condition such as diabetes that they're trying to address in working with their physicians. Others could be simply about beauty. They would like to be able to change the way they look, slim down or whatever. So there's different reasons for people coming in and then choosing to be disrupted. And that is what's so interesting about this. So when we ask Clara, what are the fundamental changes just looking at eating behavior from GLP-1 prescriptions, we found 3 buckets. And the first is diminished appetite and automatic portion controls. Okay. That means people were having smaller portions, so they're, 45% of the users kind of were in this bucket, and in practice, these people, about half of people, is when they eat they get filled up much quicker. So they're eating about half of what they normally eat, and or going to like child size servings and things like that, or people just choosing to have mini meals, And so it's really an amazing sort of change for people. People would say, like, one of the comments was, I would always go back for seconds, but not now. This is unbelievable. Yeah. So they just don't have that. Another one is diminished hunger and meal skipping, So GLP users rarely feel true hunger, and so they have to remember to eat, which is really interesting. This whole idea of from eating to live, now from living to eat to eating to live. And so another one is protein. Um, More protein or simplified meals, that are much more focused on getting high protein or nutrient rich foods into their system. So, for instance, there's a lot of community discussions that we saw about things like protein shakes, Greek yogurt, eggs, lean meats, protein packed snacks, and so on. And the last is about this idea of avoiding overeating because people found out that if they overeat, they will actually feel sick. And even in some cases, people were commenting about vomiting after they ate too much. So these sort of people are learning to quickly listen to these signals about being full so they don't have these sort of issues of about feeling sick. Now, so one way to think about this is like before someone takes GLP-1, a person may eat fast food combinations, and so on, and still feel hungry because they're eating it fast. They haven't had those sort of signals, I'm full yet. But after they start taking these prescriptions, they may order the kids' meal or a protein forward snack, and they find they can't even finish that. Now, this is really interesting because when people come off of the prescriptions, a lot of the behaviors of eating smaller and portion controls, a lot of those behaviors stick. And what I mean by that is like there is a change in people's habits that are impacted. Now, this is a habit flywheel, one of the frameworks that we taught Clara. And you think of when you have these triggers out in the environment, and people make choices because of that. They have an experience, and then there's a reward. Well, when you feel sick because of your eating, that sort of sickness becomes a punishment, not a reward. And so this is one way to stop with this flywheel going around and around, where habits are much more embedded. And now, but once you break the habits, you have the opportunity now to form new habits. And what is happening here is that people, when they have to come up with a new reward to start the cycle of this flywheel starting going around and again and forming new habits. So new triggers, new rewards, and the rewards, instead of being something like I feel pleasure from eating, is more I am now feeling comfortably full. I'm proud of my restraint. And over time, by having this continuous sort of loop, the triggers that people have start forming new habits and new choices and so on. So this sort of leads to even lifestyle changes. So it's pretty interesting. So that's the first bucket. The second bucket is about our senses. Sensory people that go on these have some very amazing changes in their sensations. For instance, sweetness becomes overwhelming. People will use the word like too sweet or sickly sweet. 75% of the people that we saw in our surveys noticed these sort of taste perceptions around sweetness. Okay. Um, Now, second is like new aversions to rich or greasy foods. Okay, so things that are rich or fatty or greasy, like bacon or fried chicken or creamy Alfredo sauce, things like that, become less appealing. And people on GLP-1 frequently report this heightened sensitivity to oily textures or strong, rich flavors. Okay, also, it's very interesting. We had one report about the smell of frying bacon or a cheesy dish can suddenly induce sort of feelings of nausea. So really fascinating where there's associations people are making to things that would be fatty or greasy from their olfaction. Third is like favorites. People, foods that they're really good. People are feeling in some cases they no longer like the taste of things that were favorite for them. And examples of this is like coffee or ice cream tastes now very different favorite flavors like chocolate or soda or candy are also frequently flagged as something that is no longer appealing. Some people mention the word food grief. And then that is what they're kind of sad because they've lost this sort of sense for really enjoying foods that they once really did. So it could be devastating in some cases, but in other cases, I'll talk to you about this can actually flip into being a really positive thing um, as I get into the next section. But the last point I want to make here is that there's a lot of increased sensitivities. It's not just the quality of the flavor or the type of flavor, but it's also this idea of a sensitivity. So people become more sensitive or picky about the foods that they eat. Things like artificial sweeteners or flavors, often because of the sensitivity, they pick up like fake or chemical tastes that were underlying or associated with like an artificial sweetener. So, and that could be a turnoff. Also with textures, people, we're seeing a lot of reports of people mentioning things like carbonated beverages feeling too sharp or bubbly, or thick protein shakes feeling unappealingly heavy. So very fascinating on how this is impacting people. So for example, before Jane here prefers sweetened or rich foods. Afterwards, she finds her eating more vegetables and fruits, which is a really good change in behavior, especially if you're trying to lose weight and so on. Now, old cravings, though, may return when people stop taking these sort of medications. So some people are reporting that their old tastes creep back afterwards. And so it's not always lasting. As where I was mentioning in terms of eating small portions and things like that, tends to be a little bit more of a lasting behavior. This has actually some sort of returns. So what does this mean? So if you're a food product developer or you are working in product guidance research from a sensory or consumer insights perspective, um, it changes what your KPIs are going to need to be as you're designing and developing foods. It's no longer about liking or enjoyment, trying to create cravings for things. It's about tolerance. It's about avoiding displeasures, or in some cases, because of the small portions, slowing down or designing food that can't be eaten fast, but must be eating slower because of the textural designs. The second point is that I believe, and what we're seeing is that emotions measurement are more important than ever before to as a KPI. That is, emotions are a more accurate measure of behavior, and therefore you need to take care if you're going to try to avoid displeasures, to avoid sort of reactions such as disgust, and more focus on things like delight and satisfaction that reinforce, their measures of reinforce whether things are perceived as a punishment or their reward for instilling these types of new habits. At last, all your sensory toolbox can be applied. You just have to interrelate it to the sort of effective measures, these measures of new types of KPIs where you're measuring, sort of what's that balance, what's that tolerance that people are having. And so you can correlate that to descriptive analysis, correlate to other sort of more measures that are more sensorial. So that's number two. Now, number three is probably the surprise for me when we got into this, and that is this idea about food noise. A lot of people sort of they see the before and after, and that's why all this food noise. They didn't realize that food noise was such a driver. So these are food noise are things that induce cravings, such as chocolate. Oh, sounds so good. Or I have a cookie now. I'll skip dessert later. Or I have these, and that leads to guilt trips. I shouldn't have eaten that. I ate too much, and so on and so forth. When people take these prescriptions, They often feel like, whoa, they're gone. All this food noise is gone. They have a sense of mental freedom. Food is no longer consistently on my mind. I feel free from all that. So it's a fascinating, liberating sort of perspective. And so this leads to less craving, less urgency to eat. Behaviorally, this sort of routine impulsive snacking or giving into your cravings is now been interrupted. And so what that leads to is these sort of potential for new triggers and new sort of habits to be formed. Now, it also leads to more mindful eating and purposeful eating because people need to eat to live. Okay, they need to have more protein in their diets, and they realize this. So 32% said they eat more slowly and consistently now. They're tasting their foods more, and they're purposely eating to get more sort of nutrients into their bodies. Um, it breaks down this sort of food obsession and guilt cycles, which is so freeing to people. People who have had a history of emotional eating, eating because they are emotionally, seeking pleasures, now often speak of GLP as lifting this huge burden, the guilt and shame that came from losing control is now gone. So really fascinating. And here you can see before and after. Jane on her commute home might be thinking about food and what she's going to have for dinner tonight and all this. Whereas during, once you've taken these prescriptions, no thinking about food, so Jane comes home, she simply fixes a small salad or protein because she knows she has to eat something. And now, what happens though when people come off these? A lot of people do report that their food noise comes back, and in some cases, that leads to old habits and impulses returning. So, what does this mean? Well, if you're a in food marketing, beverage marketing, since the motivations are changing, your branding and messaging, your product positioning needs to change. You need to be able to position yourselves as now you're aligning to a new identity for somebody, embracing a new lifestyle, and consumers that are looking for, options that fit this new normal for them, are going to be much more responsive to, healthy, portion controlled, goal oriented sort of foods that allow for them to fit with this new lifestyle. Okay, so back
So,
to
Dave,
you. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, Dave, what are the risks in your mind for the brands as it relates to GLP-1?
Yeah, I mean, companies that are not responding fast enough. I think there's a lot of risk for the brands because what the brands stand for, especially as this sort of wave of GLP-1 usage increases. And all heard about this. But if you put a behavioral lens on it, what does that really mean? So, just in summary, sweeten, if your products are overly sweet, or they have artificial sweeteners involved, that can become an avoidance for a lot of people, a large percentage of the population of consumers. If you have very strong flavors or rich foods in terms of the fattiness and greasiness and so on, that can be a turnoff for a lot of other people. A lot of people talk about flavor fatigue that are on these GLP-1 prescriptions. And that means that as they're consuming, if you have a lot of after flavors, and that builds up as you continue to consume, that can be perceived as a negative, especially as it builds up. And last, the avoidance of fortifications, you have to be more stealthy because if you have an off flavor because of the heightened sensitivities, to like a fortification. Just having something fortified may not be enough because it has to be fortified in a way that you design things so that those off flavors are not coming through. So that's one thing. The other area is in textures, and this was also a big surprise for us. Texture is really important. Portion fatigue. Again, it's not just about flavors and portion fatigue, but it's also about the textures. So if when people eat significantly less, more slowly, the texture and the format of the food, I think, takes on more outsized importance. Heavy and dense textures don't mix with tiny appetites. To kind of sum it up. People that are prescribing, they report preferring lighter and softer textures that are easier to chew and get down. And then there's certain types of textures that are just deal breakers, that really turn people off. And so it goes beyond flavors. It is also about these, if you're creating, a high fiber snack, people may claim like it's like eating cardboard, you know, deciding, finding some other way to meet their fiber goals. The last point, which is, I think, and also as much as an opportunity as anything, is this idea of some people report texture boredom. So they're eating the same foods that have to get because they're trying to eat to live. They're eating the same foods, and they would like to have more variety, in the types of textures that they have. So I think it is a way to improve people's consumptions and their experiences. Um, so what this means in kind of summary, if you think about these ideas, one is for your brands, if you can create portfolio adjustments. So in an extension that would be for people that are, designed for people that are on GLP-1 prescriptions or people that are making these lifestyle changes. That's one. Clara came up with this concept of called Goldilocks reformation, and trying to find sort of a middle road between not too strong of flavors and not too weak, but something in the middle that will fit the needs of people that are on GLP-1 prescriptions as well as those who are not. And smaller portions, of course, that's a really easy one because people can, in many cases, whether you're on GLP-1 or not, may gravitate to that. If you're just trying to lose weight, it's a great way to have smaller portions. To align the eating experiences with the pace, so these, if you can, over time, when people eat, foods can change, like the flavors can change as the product cools off or somehow changes. So that's something to be aware of in terms of, you look at things that take a consumption period. If people are going to be eating slower, then you may want to design your food a little differently. Same thing with textures. It may not be just loss of flavors or change in flavors, but it could be foods that get soggy, lose their crunch, and so on. Smoothies that don't separate, things like that, by somebody who's eating things very slow, and that could be really good for people that are taking, or are not taking GLP-1s. Um, you know, Creating products where eating experiences is not just for fuel, but especially with textures. If you can make textures interesting, I think you can, some variety in textures. You can help increase the quality of people's eating experiences, even when they have these sensitivities, even when they have these changes in what is appealing and not appealing.
So, Dave, what do you feel like this teaches us about turning risk, in this case, into opportunity?
Yeah, well, as I said earlier in the opening question, I think what Clara is teaching us with all this information and this behavioral lens on top of it is that, you know, for people that have been disrupted, already disrupted, um, there are risks, but there's also huge opportunities that this disruption creates. And so the question is for your brands, do you want to seize those opportunities that fit with your strategic plans? And if it does, then this teaches us a lot about how to mitigate those risks or how to seize the opportunities through food product development and innovation. So when we asked Clara, what new product innovation opportunities can you suggest? She came up with three buckets of ideas. And you have to realize these are without context because in each of these cases, you could look at a specific type of application to a category or for a brand. These are more general statements. The first has to do with protein. And so many struggle to get their protein goals because they physically just can't eat enough of it, And when you don't feel like eating, you don't have a desire to eat, a hunger to eat. This is really an important area. What we've found is that a lot of people make comments about finding sort of creative ways to get more protein in. So, like having a protein shake first thing in the morning, which I'd never think about, um, or uh, or when they're least in the morning is might be when they're least nauseous, and so what this tells us is that there is a demand for high protein, but also demand for novel protein formats that fit different specific moments of people's lives, such as, some ideas that Clara came up with was savory protein beverages or protein that come in very, very small volumes. Yesterday, I was on a conference call, excuse me, I was on a webinar that was hosted by IFT. And we had someone that was co-speaking with me from Danone, and they were talking about one of their protein, a high protein shake that they came out with, which was very small, sort of not shots, but very small volumes for on the go. That's a great example of this. The second area is in hydration and fiber. And, GLP-1 causes a lot of sort of reduced thirst and so and often constipation. So consumers tend to know they have to drink more and have increased fiber in their diets, but drinking a ton of water is really tough. I've done that where I need water and it's like, drink glass after glass, or to get fiber to stay regular, those are really important things, but it's difficult to do. So I think there's opportunities for many fiber supplements or different ways that you can get people to drink things, get hydrated without getting full and without, making it, a much more applicable solution for your lifestyle. So if you can create fiber foods, making them more easy to consume, more enjoyable because of the texture qualities, that would be great, and so on. Ideas that Clara came up with fiber infused, low sugar drinks that's sippable throughout the day, type of thing. So a lot of, I think there's a lot of opportunities there, specifically if you can focus on moments of opportunity. And last, the micronutrients. Obviously people need to get vitamins and minerals into their diets. So consumers may not immediately tend to take supplements, but to create foods that are fortified in more of a stealthy way, so you don't have any off flavors that are going to be more objectionable because of the heightened sensitivities. So I think these are some of the opportunities which I think that companies can focus on.
Great, thanks, Dave. So when consumer enjoyment shifts, how should innovation teams adjust in your mind, Dave?
Well, this is a great question because it gets to the root of how organizations need to change if they decide that this is what they want to go after, because it is no longer about pleasure and liking and enjoyment. So let's start with marketing. And marketing for lifestyle impact, I think label things, products as GLP-1 friendly, I think is a niche play. It's not being bold enough for innovations if you really want to seize the opportunity. I believe that positioning products as lifestyle products that fit for not just GLP-1 users, but others that are seeking to have a much healthier lifestyle is the bigger and the longer lasting play. The second is designing foods that go beyond liking. And this is more an R&D sort of product guidance sort of perspective. As I said earlier, it's not going to be about maximizing liking. You need to find other ways to create and maximize behavioral impact for these people that have been disrupted or people that are seeking to have more healthier lifestyles. So designing and developing rewarding experiences and minimizing punishments creates a completely new behavioral lens on what the KPI should be for product guidance research. And so that should be a much more emotional based in terms of the types of measures that you're going to be measuring. Perhaps you want to slow down eating. So that means that you're going to need some sort of KPIs around eating rates. Very, very important, as well as ways of sort of aligning with like if you're trying to minimize off flavors, be very, to look at sensitivities. That's something that you can get with through really good sensory measurement and help to align with those sort of product experiences. And so that's the two key buckets I think I would say is really, really important for organizations.
Great. So how do you feel Clara can be leveraged by the large food and beverage manufacturers out there to make the most of the GLP disruption opportunity here, Dave?
Well, as I'm a, I'm hoping what I'm reading today, not reading, I'm discussing today, comes from a distillation of an amazing amount of content that Clara provides to these questions. And so it's a distillation of this into talking points because we only have so much today. But the depth of that and everything is referenced back to specific parts of these articles that we ingested. Uh, um, Clara can also be turned open, can be turned, you can turn on external, like out in the Google sphere, so to speak, what sort of information is out there. Could be valuable to address certain types of questions. But in this idea of GLP-1 disruption, if you want to seize the opportunity, you need to find a way of going from, okay, this is the data that I have. I want to build a knowledge base on top of that. And then on top of the knowledge base, I want to infuse like this sort of behavioral lens. I think having a behavioral lens is so important because it allows you to go from I got the right information, or maybe be able to assess whether I have enough information or is there holes in my information so that I can innovate or I can more effectively co-create to come to concepts or I can more effectively, come up with that idea that is going to have the greatest behavioral impact and then take that idea and that be to and if for creating a behavioral impact and translate that into product packaging and marketing. So I think this is the opportunity that we're going to an intelligent knowledge base like this could be so valuable. And and this is what the GLP-1 sort of impact and creating opportunities, minimizing risks is a perfect example for where behavioral science has an opportunity to really be infused into the product development design process. And that's a complex thing. And Clara has a way because how she's been trained and designed in workflows to be able to help that innovation process. Any other thoughts, Shannon, on that?
Yeah, I just would say that for folks on the line today that are interested in learning more, we could show you what that actually looks like. We have a platform solution that is quite robust, and one of the things that's super important about it as well, in addition to what you just shared, Dave, is that it creates playbooks for cross-functional teams so that the behavioral lens that we're bringing to the data interpretation is consistent across those teams, and the ability for our clients to innovate not only faster but actually more effectively is what's going to happen here, is what is happening. So happy to show it to folks who are on the line today if there's interest.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so with that, we're open for some questions.
Yeah, please put any questions in the chat or just things that we said that want us to go deeper on, anything like that. And will the team be sharing the deck after the call? It's one of the questions.
We can share if you have a specific question. We're not going to share it out to everybody, but if you want to get sort of some information, a deck, or set up a conversation, please reach out to us. And I don't know if we have, we don't have here. I think at the very end, I think there's some places to do that. You could do it in the chat directly to us if you're interested. That's probably the best way.
There you go. And then another question, what about sensory or behavioral changes with alcoholic beverages, Dave?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question because, you know, uh, people report that beverages, is one of those things that people love it before, and really appreciate it, and it is diminished in its appeal. So the question is why, and so is it the alcohol taste? Is it the flavors are stronger and whatever? It's a challenge for the alcohol industry to be able to develop things that have I think having things that are lower in alcohol level, or things that are even more importantly in the social context, which alcohol is so much a part of in our culture, to have options for people that are non-alcoholic but have lower sort of flavor, not strong, intense flavors that build up, not having, effervescence that's really strong and prickly, I think there's opportunities so if people don't lose the social element, where they can feel they're part of an occasion with their friends or family. So I think that's more the opportunity is, and how to think differently when you're trying to, for people that have been disrupted this way, to provide some way to help them cope.
Yeah, there's another follow-on question. Looks like, could Clara help answer those questions about alcohol beverage? I think you covered a lot of it. But the answer is yes. And if you want to put it a little more.
Yeah, I got some other questions here I'm seeing. So I'd love to have, so, um, you list brand loyalty risks, sweetness, avoidance, texture, deal breakers, protein fatigue, and texture boredom. Which of these is most likely to cause consumers to quiet quit a brand? And I think it could be any of the above, quite frankly. Certainly, sweetness is really important and a change agent here, a disruption for these people. Um, Textures are really interesting because I think texture is secondary to like sweetness, but and I think texture could be an opportunity, be texture designs, even more so than it is a deal breaker. But there are certainly reports of things that are hard and take more work to consume, that are thicker. That is, especially if it leads to fatigue. You got to be very careful about that because these are the subtle things that can lead to, I'm no longer finding this is an appealing, product that I can consume. So I would say be careful about your sweetness first. Certainly, the greasiness and fatty textures are definitely, those mouthfeels are really important. And beyond that, I think it's more subtle things like fatigue and boredom that could be as much of an opportunity as it is something to watch out for as a risk to your brands.
Dave, I've got a couple more here for you. Two looks like it's so a couple more from Daniela. What are the main health benefit consumers are looking for? Are there any mentions on heart health benefit, metabolic health, or is it exclusively to weight, diabetes and weight? And then there's a following question, but I'll let you answer those because that's a lot.
Yeah, so the question is about other sort of health risks that people have. And is this correct? I'm not
Yeah,
quite
correct.
understanding the question.
Yeah, exactly. So I think what I understand too here is that there's a certain percentage of the population that are eligible now for these drugs because they have essentially heart conditions. And so to lose weight, to decrease those risks,
Yep.
they're eligible, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So things like related to, yeah.
Yeah, well, certainly this is a solution for people. And if losing weight, heart condition, it helps alleviate that in some cases, as well as diabetes. It could be a good way to help address those health concerns. And people are generally ecstatic about how these products are helping them get healthier when they have these conditions. By and large, people are willing to trade away the changes in food, the sensory perceptions and so on, for the health benefits. So I think it's is a tremendous tool for people to use. And if we can create products that go along with that to improve people's lives, all the better.
Great. One more question here. It looks like what are other applications to marketing questions can Clara also work for?
All right, so marketing is very fascinating, because this idea of positioning against lifestyle versus positioning a product as quote unquote GLP-1 friendly. Um, I think there's ways, and we're working with at least one company along this way, is that where the combined services that, in terms of how do people get information about what are the different foods or beverages that go along with these prescriptions. I think the service package that goes along with something where somebody can get information to help them make choices so they can, make shift to eating to live, eating to stay healthy, to while they're losing weight, I think is really important. So, so I think we should not think about GLP-1 users as one group of people. I think we should, from a marketing perspective and even from front end of innovation perspective, I think there's opportunities to have products designed for different needs in the context of different moments. Okay. So it is about niche marketing, if you want to call when niche marketing is not the right. It's about um, what do you call it? A smaller sort of um, markets that you're trying to, instead of broad markets, it's looking and design of products for very specific purposes. And I
Niche
think that it,
moments.
yeah, niche moments. That's a better way to put it.
Yeah.
So, uh, so if you, of course, if a product can fit in more moments of people's lives, it is serving a bigger market. So I think that's another way to think about it, especially in innovation, to be able to look at that. If you have a product that you're not changing and you're just trying to market it, you have to be really careful about the say do issue, over promising for something that it will not deliver on the needs that of people that are taking GLP-1s.
I don't
So
see any other questions in my end. Do you see any
yeah,
in
so,
your?
yeah. So if
Yeah.
you, I think you've been looking at the chat. So the Q&A, there's what signals should we watch for to know whether behavioral change is likely to persist, not just a spike in a short-lived trend? I mean, this is really interesting to think about. Okay, is GLP-1s, is this just a short-lived trend or a fad? Good question. And if you look back, I'm thinking back on other sort of trends I've seen. I've seen proteins. Suddenly everybody wants protein, and so on. You're seeing way back when um, different types of more natural sweeteners or natural sort of flavorings and so on. These are all clean label was another a trend. It These sort of things have all, when you think about natural products or foods from natural sources, um, this idea of healthier eating is a broader trend that GLP-1 kind of fits under. And so it's GLP-1s are supporting multiple things at once. So and so if you're thinking about trying, is this a trend or something that is here to stay? I think when you look at that lens long term, it is supporting multiple sort of drivers of a change in our today. And so, for that said, I think GLP-1s is here to stay for a long time. I think is going to be part of our culture. Whether it gets to 30%, I don't know, but it is not going to have a big wave and then drop off. I think it's going to be here, and I think that the sooner we as an industry can embrace it and work with it, it will reap benefits for those companies that make that determination. What has been the last question I see here is what has been the impact on the way people socialize, and what does it mean for other industries? Oh, that's a fascinating question. I really thank Paula for that one, because I mentioned earlier beauty care, personal care, are certainly areas that are other industries very much impacted by this. Let's take beauty care as an example. So very social. People want to look good. It helps your self-esteem, and it helps you in with for a lot of people's motivations, or where they want to go in their lives. And so I think beauty care is a huge opportunity, and you see the beauty care industry definitely latching onto this. And I don't see them talking about GLP friendly beauty care products. That's not what I mean, but as a lifestyle, as a way to achieve your goals in life, around how you look and how that makes you feel as an individual, I think is really important and a part of this. And certainly there's a lot of the pharma companies are also taking some great strides in terms of looking for this idea of service platforms around taking GLP-1 prescriptions to help them get the right information so they can actually achieve their health goals. I think this is another whole area that's important, and I think should not be overlooked.
If there are any other questions, please go ahead and put them in the chat.
Yeah. So much appreciate everybody's, the opportunity to share with you today. Before we close, one thing I want to mention is that for the next 2 months, we're going to be picking up on the same theme with Clara, but we're going to be bringing on, I don't know if many of you know Mimi Sherlock. She's the Vice President of Consumer Intelligence at IFF. And she's going to be bringing a case study to the group, and we'll focus on March 26th at that webinar on really discovery, part of the front end innovation. How do you discover ideas that have behavioral impact? And she'll be focusing on the GLP snacking behavior area. And then in April, Mimi is going to be working with us again and talking about how she's been working with Clara for concept co-creation. So picking one or more snacking moments and for GLP-1 and advancing these ideas into full-blown concepts, and how the intelligence of Clara can help in that process. So anyways, next 2 months, we're going to be continuing this, but more focused on a case study.
Yeah, the thing is excited about that, just a little more color on that, is that, Clara really is, a thought partner with not only our workflow, but in particular our clients' workflows. And it's allowing our clients to speed up the innovation process dramatically. So yeah, you'll get the next couple webinars, you'll get to hear her talk about how that's working for them. So
yeah,
thanks for
so
joining.
again, please reach out, and if you have any further questions. And with that, thank you, everybody.